Ambassador Park Ji-woo stepped through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber, her heart pounding against her ribs. The sight before her never failed to take her breath away. The chamber stretched upward for what seemed like miles, its crystalline walls pulsing with soft blue light. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy, each more alien than the last. She gripped the datapad tighter, feeling the weight of humanity's future in her hands. The holographic displays around her showed real-time translations, floating above each delegate's head, turning their clicks, roars, and electronic pulses into words she could understand. "Remember why we're here," whispered Dr. Kim Tae-hyun beside her. His weathered face showed the strain of months spent analyzing the terrifying data they'd discovered. 47-dimensional tiers and counting. The readings don't lie. Ju-woo nodded and activated her speaking platform. The chamber's attention system locked onto her, bathing her in a warm spotlight that felt more like a prison beam. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and consciousness probes focused on the small human. Woman standing before them. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying across the vast space through the translation matrix. "I come before you today with urgent findings from Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network. Our long-range quantum sensors have detected severe dimensional instabilities in the Vega system." A ripple of what sounded like electronic laughter came from the Synthoid delegation. Their leader, a towering robot with glowing red optical sensors, spoke with a voice like grinding gears. "The humans bring us fairy tales again. How amusing." Shh. Gu pressed on, bringing up holographic displays of the sensor data. The images showed space itself seeming to crack and bend near Vega, reality warping in ways that hurt to look at directly. These readings indicate massive tears in the fabric of space-time. Something is trying to break through from another dimension. General Vexstar of the Drakmori Empire slammed his massive clawed fist onto his throne's armrest, the sound echoing like thunder through the chamber. The 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior's scales shifted from green to angry red as he stood. "Enough. Your pathetic species crawled out of caves while my people conquered star systems. We have monitored every inch of this galaxy for 10,000 years. The general's forked tongue flicked out as he continued his tirade. "Your sensors are toys compared to our detection grids. There are no dimensional anomalies because such things are impossible. The barriers between realities cannot be breached." Hive Queen Zixara rose from her platform, her forearms spreading wide. The insectoid ruler's compound eyes glittered with annoyance as her mandibles clicked rapidly. "The collective has scanned the Vega sector with our bioneural networks. Our living sensors detect only normal cosmic radiation and stellar winds. These humans see monsters in every shadow." Dr. Kim Tae-hyun stepped forward, his face flushed with frustration. "Your Majesty, with respect. Our dimensional resonance technology operates on quantum frequencies that your biosensors cannot detect. We're not seeing shadows, we're seeing cracks in reality itself." Ambassador Kelthus materialized closer to the human delegation, his energy form crackling with barely contained power. The Luxari were beings of pure plasma held together by magnetic fields, and when angry, they glowed brighter. "Quantum frequencies. Your species discovered fire mere moments ago in galactic terms. We have existed as energy beings for millions of years. Young mammals. We would know if reality itself was in danger." His form pulsed with dismissive energy patterns. "Earth contributes nothing to this council but primitive fears and wild theories. Perhaps humans should focus on learning to properly manage their own world before lecturing their betters about cosmic threats." The chamber erupted in sounds of agreement. Clicking mandibles, electronic beeps of approval, harmonic tones of consent, and growls of dismissal filled the air. Wu felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but she refused to back down. "The mining operation you're planning," she said, raising her voice above the noise, "scheduled to drill directly through the largest dimensional weak point we've detected. If you breach that barrier, silence." His metallic form rising to its full 12-foot height. The ancient being's body was composed of living liquid metal that could reshape itself at will. And right now, it It was forming into a shape designed to intimidate. The Vega mining expedition represents the combined efforts of 17 species and an investment of trillions of credits.
Ow.
It will not be delayed by human paranoia. His voice boomed across the chamber with the authority of someone who had ruled for centuries. The matter is closed. Earth's concerns are noted in the official record and dismissed as scientifically unfounded. The mining operation commences in 26 standard days. The gavel came down with finality, its sound reverberating through the crystalline chamber. Around them, delegates began filing out, their conversations filled with mockery and disdainful comments about human intelligence and reliability. G.H. Wu stood frozen as aliens passed by her platform. She heard fragments of their dismissive chatter through the translation matrix. Always dramatic, these humans. They see apocalypses everywhere. Perhaps we should limit their council access. Dr. Kim Tae-hein moved beside her, his scientific mind already racing. Gee, Wu, we need to get back to Earth immediately. If they won't listen to warnings, we need to prepare for what's coming. As they gathered their data and prepared to leave, Gi-Wu caught sight of the massive holographic display showing the Vega system. The mining fleet was already assembling thousands of ships from across the galaxy, preparing to tear into space itself in search of rare minerals. They have no idea what they're about to unleash, she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of certain doom. The chamber doors sealed behind them with a sound like a tomb closing. In 26 days, the galaxy would learn that sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important message. But by then, it would be far too late to listen. Captain Lee Soo-jin rubbed her tired eyes as she scrolled through the endless supply reports on her tablet. The Aegis floated silently in Earth's outer defense perimeter, one of dozens of human ships keeping watch while the galaxy ignored their warnings. Coffee had gone cold in her mug hours ago, but she kept sipping it anyway. Another thrilling day of inventory management, muttered Lieutenant Choi Min-ho from his communications station. The young officer had been monitoring galactic chatter for weeks, hoping to catch any sign that someone, somewhere, was taking humanity's warnings seriously. Suddenly, every alarm on the ship began shrieking at once. Red lights bathed the bridge as emergency signals flooded in from across the galaxy. Min-ho's face went white as he frantically adjusted his equipment. Captain, something's happening at the mining site. His voice cracked with panic. Distress signals from ... from everywhere. Lee Soo-jin shot to her feet, spilling coffee across her reports. Put it on the main screen. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the Vega system where the massive mining operation had been underway, where there should have been thousands of ships and orbital platforms. There was ... nothing. Just empty space that seemed to twist and writhe like a living thing. Status report. Lee Soo-jin barked. Communications Officer Han Le-jin's hands flew over her controls, her face growing paler by the second. Captain, I'm getting emergency broadcasts from 17 different star systems. They're all saying the same thing. Something came through the mining shafts. The main screen shifted to show the location of Drakmor Prime, homeworld of the arrogant General Vexstar and 60 billion Drakmori citizens. Lee Soo-jin had visited there once during diplomatic missions. Beautiful world of towering crystal cities and floating gardens. Now there was nothing, not even debris. Just a hole in space that hurt to look at directly, as if reality itself had been scooped out like ice cream from a bowl. Possible, whispered Min-ho. Planets don't just ... disappear. Before anyone could respond, another alarm chimed. An incoming transmission from the mining fleet itself. Han Le-jin nodded grimly and activated the receiver. The hologram that materialized made everyone on the bridge gasp. It was Fleet Commander Zixara, the proud insectoid leader, who had dismissed human warnings just weeks ago. But this wasn't the confident warrior they remembered. Her compound eyes were wild with terror, her beautiful iridescent shell cracked and bleeding green fluid. Anyone who can hear this transmission, stay away from Vega, she screamed, her voice breaking. We drilled too deep, we broke through into ... into something else. They came through the mining shaft screechers, made of living darkness. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship was in chaos. Alien crew members ran screaming past the camera as lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged equipment. "They don't exist in our dimension completely," Zixara continued, her forearms gesturing frantically. "Our weapons pass right through them, but they can touch us. They're consuming everything matter, energy, even the space between atoms. Their pure hunger-given form, transmission began breaking up, filled with static and interference. Through the noise, they could hear the sound of tearing metal and something that might have been screaming. We were wrong. Humans were. Right. They tried to warn us, but we wouldn't listen. If anyone receives this message, tell them the barriers between dimensions have been the hologram vanished, leaving only empty static." For a moment, the bridge of the Aegis was completely silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Then Han the Gin's station lit up like a Christmas tree as dozens of new distress signals poured in. "Captain," she reported, her voice barely steady, 12 more star systems just went dark. The Keth colonies in the Rigel sector, the Syntoid manufacturing worlds near Sirius, ... They're all gone." Li Sujin watched in horror as red markers began appearing across the galactic map display. Each marker represented billions of lives snuffed out in moments by creatures that shouldn't exist. "How fast are they moving?" she asked. Minho ran. "The calculations, his face growing even paler. At this rate, ... they'll reach the core worlds in less than 2 days. Nexus Prime, the council chambers, everything." Li Sujin grabbed her communicator. "Get me Admiral Kung Duhayan on Earth immediately. Priority Alpha clearance." Within seconds, the weathered face of Admiral Kang appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see the bustling activity of Earth's hidden military command center, a facility most humans didn't even know existed. "Admiral, the void breach has occurred," she reported, using the code name they'd developed for this exact scenario. "Multiple systems consumed. Entities are moving toward galactic core."
"Admiral?"
Kong's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew hard. "Confirmed sightings of the entities themselves?" "Yes, sir." Fleet Commander Zixara transmitted visual confirmation before her ship was destroyed. "They match our theoretical predictions exactly, beings that exist partially outside normal space-time." The Admiral nodded grimly. "And it's time, Captain. Activate Protocol Dimension Shield. Send the activation codes to all our hidden facilities." Li Sujin felt a chill run down her spine. For 30 years, humanity had been secretly preparing for this moment, while the galaxy mocked their paranoia. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in hidden bases on Mars and the Moon, in asteroid facilities that officially didn't exist, humanity had been building weapons and defenses for a war no one else believed would come. "All stations," she announced too. Her crew, we are now at Condition Black. This is not a drill. Across human space, massive generators began powering up. Reality anchor stations hidden in asteroid belts activated their quantum field projectors. Dimensional barrier reinforcement grids came online around every human world. On the main screen, the red markers continued multiplying as more star systems fell to the void wraiths. But now, blue markers began appearing as well human ships, emerging from hidden bases armed with weapons that conventional physics said shouldn't work. "Sir," reported Minho, monitoring fleet communications, the Reality's Edge, Dimension Walker, and Quantum Storm are reporting ready status. All dimensional warfare protocols are active. Admiral Kong's voice crackled through the speakers. "Captain Lee, you have command of the Advanced Reconnaissance Force. Your mission is to study these entities in combat and relay tactical data to the main fleet." Li Sujin straightened in her command chair. "Understood, Admiral. The Aegis is ready." As her ship turned toward the expanding zone of destruction, she couldn't help but think about Ambassador Park Ji-woo's words in the council chamber. They'll regret this. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their courage. It was their willingness to prepare for nightmares that others refused to believe could be real. The war for reality itself was about to begin. The space around Arcturus looked like a battlefield from hell. Burning alien ships drifted through the void while their crews screamed for help on every emergency frequency. The mighty Galactic Defense Fleet, which had ruled the stars for millennia, was running like scared children from monsters they couldn't even touch. Admiral Kong Du Hyan stood on the bridge of his flagship Dimensional Fury, watching the chaos through the main view screen. His weathered hands gripped the railing as he saw a massive Drakmori battlecruiser simply vanish into nothingness, consumed by creatures that looked like living tears in space itself. "Sir, the Keth Third Fleet is requesting immediate assistance," reported his communications officer. "They've lost 70% of their ships in the last hour. Tell them help is on the way," Kong replied grimly. He opened fleet-wide communications. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Kong. We've trained for this moment our entire lives. Time to show the galaxy what paranoid humans can build." Around him, 37 human warships materialized from hyperspace jumps. Unlike the elegant curves and polished surfaces of alien vessels, the human ships looked brutal and practical. Their hulls were covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them directly, giving most observers instant headaches. Captain Yoon Hae-won felt her stomach lurch as the Void Walker engaged its dimensional phase. Protocols. The ship around her began to blur and shimmer like a heat mirage, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Through her neural interface, she could feel the ship's AI struggling to process reality on 17 different quantum levels. "This never gets easier," muttered her helmsman, Lieutenant Kim Jae-soon, as his console displayed readings that conventional physics said were impossible. "Contacts," shouted Tactical Officer Nam Soo-bin from his station. "Multiple void wraiths, moving to intercept the fleeing Keth vessels. Distance, 40,000 kilometers, and closing fast." On the main screen, they could see the creatures clearly for the first time. The void wraiths looked like massive jellyfish made of pure darkness, their bodies shifting between dimensions so rapidly they appeared as writhing shadows against the stars. Each one was easily the size of a space station, with tentacles of living void that could stretch across kilometers. "All weapon systems online," reported Nam Soo-bin. "Quantum disruptors charged and ready. Exotic matter cannons loaded. With dimensional ammunition?" Captain Yoon Hae-won watched as 3 Keth destroyers tried desperately to escape a pursuing wraith. Their plasma cannons fired continuously, but the energy beams passed harmlessly through the creature's partially phased form. The wraith's tentacles wrapped around the lead destroyer, and the ship simply ceased to exist, not exploded. It's not crushed, but erased from reality itself. "Not today, you cosmic nightmare," she growled. "All weapons, target the lead wraith. Fire everything we have." The human fleet opened fire simultaneously. Unlike alien weapons that fired beams of energy or solid projectiles, human weapons tore holes in space-time itself. Quantum disruptors created cascading failures and dimensional barriers, striking the wraiths in the spaces between realities where they actually existed. The lead wraith, which had been casually consuming Keth's ships moments before, suddenly convulsed. In what could only be described as pain, dark matter began bleeding from tears in its form as exotic matter cannons found their mark. "Direct hit," Nam Soo-bin reported with excitement. "The creature's quantum signature is destabilizing. For the first time since the breach began, one of the seemingly invincible void wraiths let out a shriek that came not through space, but through dimensions, rattling the minds of every living being within light years." Lieutenant Commander Park Min-seok piloted his fighter Ghost Dancer through maneuvers that would kill any normal pilot. Using micro-dimensional shifts, he appeared directly behind a smaller wraith and fired his quantum torpedoes point-blank into what his instruments identified as the creature's core. "Echo 7 to Fleet Command," he reported over the barely containing his excitement. "Scratch 1 shadow. These things do bleed when you hit them in the right dimension." But the victory came at a terrible price. As human weapons found their marks, the void wraiths began adapting. They started phasing more rapidly between dimensions, making them harder to target. Worse, they began fighting back with reality warping. Attacks that could turn a starship inside out or scatter its atoms across 17 different universes. The destroyer. Quantum Edge simply folded in half as a wraith's tentacle touched it, the laws of physics breaking down around the contact point. Captain Yoon watched in horror as the crew of 300 vanished into a dimensional rift. "We're losing too many ships," reported Fleet Captain Oh Young-min from the heavy cruiser Reality's Edge. His ship's hull was scarred with impossible geometries where Wraith attacks had partially phased through it. "But we're learning their attack patterns. Their quantum signatures follow predictable cycles." Admiral Kong studied the tactical display, watching as red markers representing human losses multiplied across the screen. For every Wraith they destroyed, they were losing 2 ships. The math was simple and brutal at this rate. They'd run out of vessels before the Wraiths ran out of hunger. "Admiral," Oh Young-min's voice came through the "come again, request permission to implement the Soul Protocol." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what the Soul Protocol meant. Entire squadrons would sacrifice themselves to gather detailed scan data on Wraith dimensional signatures, feeding the information back to the main fleet through quantum entanglement. Communicators that would survive even total ship destruction. Admiral Kong closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on him. These weren't just ships, they were crews, families. Friends who had trained together for decades preparing for this exact moment. "Permission granted," he said quietly. Then louder, over the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang. We came here knowing the cost. We fight not just for humanity, but for every species that wouldn't listen to our warnings. For the 40 billion souls already lost to these creatures, Soul Protocol is now active. Show them that humans don't go quietly into the dark." The fleet volunteer crews began their final approaches. The destroyer Soul's Pride led the charge, followed by 6 heavy fighters and 2 frigates. They flew directly into the heart of the Wraith formation, their sensors recording every detail of the creatures. Dimensional signatures even as reality tore apart around them, as the volunteer ships died, yet their final transmissions painted a complete picture of Wraith physiology and attack patterns. The data flowed through quantum communicators to the remaining human vessels, giving them the information they needed to fight more effectively. "Data received and processed," reported Nam Su-ben, his voice thick with emotion. "The fallen ship's sacrifice is giving us targeting solutions. We can hurt these things." Captain Yoon Hae-won wiped away tears and steeled herself for the next phase of the battle. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology, was their willingness to sacrifice everything for others. Those who had mocked and dismissed them. The war for reality was just beginning. The one's magnificent. Galactic Council Chamber looked like a refugee camp. Broken ceiling panels hung at odd angles, and emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across walls that had once sparkled with crystalline beauty. Where hundreds of proud alien delegates once sat in their floating platforms, now only 37 survivors remained, huddled together like frightened children. Ambassador Park Ji-woo walked through the massive doors. But this time, everything was different. Her footsteps echoed with authority as Admiral Kang Do-hyun marched beside her, his weathered face set in stone. Behind them came Captain Lee Soo-jin, Captain Yoon Hae-won, and 12 of humanity's top military commanders, their black uniforms. Stark against the colorful robes and natural forms of the alien survivors, supreme. Leader Mordux was barely recognizable. The proud metallic being, who had once towered 12 feet tall, now hunched forward, his liquid metal body scarred with impossible wounds where void wraith attacks had torn through his molecular structure. When he spoke, his voice was broken and hollow. "Ambassador Park, Admiral Kang, said, struggling to his feet. We were wrong about everything. Your species tried to warn us, and we laughed. Now half the galaxy is gone." Around the chamber, other survivors nodded in agreement. General Vexstar, once the mighty Drakmori warrior who had roared insults at human intelligence, now sat with his scales dulled to gray, 3 of his forearms missing from a wraith encounter. The few remaining Qth delegates huddled together, their normally bright bioluminescent patches flickering weakly with grief. 57 star systems, whispered Hive Queen Zixara, her compound eyes dim with exhaustion. 57 worlds with billions of lives, all consumed in 3 days. Our weapons, our fleets, our ancient knowledge. None of it mattered. Admiral Kang stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The price of human assistance is non-negotiable. Complete military command authority over all remaining galactic forces. No committees, no debates, no second guessing. When I give an order, it gets followed immediately and without question.
Wow.
The silence stretched. For long moments. These were beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, who had never bowed to anyone, especially not to the primitive humans they had mocked just days ago. General Vextar's remaining hand clenched into a fist. His warrior pride warring with desperate reality. Finally, he hissed in frustration and nodded. Agreed. What do you need from us? Dr. Kim Tae-hyun activated his portable holographic projector, filling the center of the chamber with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red zones marked the areas consumed by void wraiths, while pulsing orange indicated zones under active attack. At the heart of it all, near the Vega system, a massive tier in space-time itself glowed with malevolent energy. This is the primary breach point, he explained, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on the rift. It's not just a hole in space, it's a wound in reality itself. The void wraiths are using it as their main entry point from their dimension into ours. Captain Yoon Hae-won pointed to the swirling energies around the rift. Our long-range sensors show thousands of wraiths gathered around this breach, with more coming through every hour. As long as this gateway remains open, they can bring unlimited reinforcements. Can we destroy it? Asked one of the surviving Synthoid representatives, his robotic voice crackling with static from battle damage. Dr. Kim Tae-hyun nodded grimly. Theoretically, yes. We've developed quantum resonance charges that can cause a cascade failure in dimensional barriers. The explosion would collapse the rift and seal the breach permanently. But prompted Supreme Leader Mordex, sensing there was more. But the charges have to be detonated from inside the rift itself, Captain Lee Soo-jin said, stepping forward. Someone has to fly directly into that tier in reality and trigger the explosion from the center of the breach. The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Inside the rift meant being surrounded by thousands of void wraiths, in a space where reality itself was breaking down. That's suicide, breathed Hive Queen Zixara. Yes, Admiral Kong replied simply. It is.
Captain Lee.
Soo-jin straightened her shoulders. The Aegis has the most advanced dimensional shielding of any ship in the human fleet. We've been testing our reality anchor technology for 30 years. If anyone can survive long enough inside that rift to deploy the charges, it's my crew, Lieutenant. Choi Min-ho, who had been quietly standing behind the command group, stepped forward. Captain, with respect, the entire bridge crew volunteers for this mission. We've been together for 8 years. We're not letting you go alone. Admiral Kong's expression softened slightly as he looked at the young officer. Captain Lee, this is a one-way mission. Even if the charges work perfectly, the explosion will vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers of the detonation. Point. Lee Soo-jin met his gaze steadily. I understand, sir. But 40 billion people are already dead because this council wouldn't listen to our warnings. I won't stand by and let that number become 40 billion and one around the chamber. Alien representatives began to understand what they were witnessing. These humans, the species they had dismissed as primitive and paranoid, were preparing to sacrifice themselves to save a galaxy that had mocked them. There has to be another way, protested Ambassador Kelthos, his energy form flickering with guilt and desperation. There isn't, Dr. Kim Tae-hyun replied. We've run every simulation, explored every possibility. The only way to seal that breach is from the inside, and the explosion will destroy whoever delivers the charges. Captain Yoon Hae-won pulled up. Tactical displays showing the remaining galactic fleets will coordinate a massive diversionary attack to draw the wraiths away from the breach point. Every ship we have left will engage the creatures in the outer system while the Aegis makes its run. How many ships do we have left? Asked General Vextar. The numbers that appeared on the holographic display made everyone flinch.
Almighty.
Galactic fleets that had once numbered in the tens of thousands were reduced to fewer than 800 operational vessels. Most of those were damaged. It will have to be enough, Admiral Kong said firmly. We'll use every trick we've learned, every weapon we've developed, every ship that can still fly. The diversionary attack will be the largest space battle in galactic history. Supreme Leader. Mordek straightened as much as his damaged form would allow. Admiral Kong, you have complete authority over all remaining galactic forces. We place our fleets, our weapons, our lives in your hands. One by one, the other survivors nodded their agreement. Species that had never cooperated, that had fought. Wars for thousands of years now united under human command in a desperate bid for survival. When do we attack? Asked Hive Queen Zixara. Admiral Kong checked his chronometer in 6 hours. That gives us time to coordinate our forces and brief all commanders on human tactical doctrine. As the meeting broke up and alien representatives hurried to contact their remaining fleets, Captain Lee Sujin stood quietly in the center of the chamber, staring at the holographic display of the rift that would be her final destination. The war for reality had come down to this: one ship, one crew, and one chance to save a galaxy that had never believed in them. The Aegis shuddered violently as it approached the Nexus Rift, reality itself seeming to bend and twist around the massive tear in space-time. Captain Lee Sujin gripped her command chair as the ship's hull groaned under stresses that no material was designed to withstand. Through the viewscreen, she could see the impossible sight before them, a wound in the universe itself, pulsing with colors that had no names. Hull integrity at 60% and falling, reported Engineering Officer Song Haeanwoo, his voice tight with concern. Dimensional shielding is holding, but I don't know for how much longer. Around them, the largest space battle in galactic history raged. Nearly 800 ships from dozens of species fought desperately against thousands of void wraiths pouring through the rift. Explosions lit up the darkness as alien vessels fired everything they had at the shadowy creatures. Finally able to hurt them now that human weapons had forced the wraiths to exist more solidly in normal space, Lieutenant Choi Minho's hands moved steadily across his console, his young face calm, despite knowing these were his final moments. Quantum resonance charges are armed and ready, Captain. Detonation sequence will begin in 45 seconds. Through the chaos of battle, Lee Sujin could see Admiral Kong's flagship Dimensional Fury leading the diversionary attack. Streams of exotic matter and quantum disruptors tore through wraith formations. Buying precious seconds for the Aegis to reach its target, Captain called out Navigator Kim Ju-young from her station. We're approaching the rift's event horizon.
Wait.
We crossed that line. There's no turning back. Lee Sujin looked around her bridge at the crew she'd served with for 8 years. These weren't just officers. They were family. Minho, barely 25 years old, who sent letters to his parents every week. Hanwoo, whose wife had given birth to twins just last month. Ju-young, who'd been planning to retire and teach at the Naval Academy. I want you all to know, she said quietly, that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. The ship crossed into the rift, and reality went insane. Through the view screen, they could see impossible geometry spaces that folded in on themselves. Stars that burned with cold fire, and in the distance, something that made their minds struggle to process what they were seeing. My God, whispered Communications Officer Han the Jin, her voice filled with awe and terror. I can see their home dimension. It's like looking into the mouth of a hungry universe. The realm beyond the rift was a place of pure emptiness and endless hunger. Massive void wraiths moved through space that wasn't quite space feeding. On the energy of dying realities, it was a dimension where nothing could exist except pure consumption, where matter and energy were nothing but food for creatures that had devoured entire universes. 30 seconds to detonation, Minho reported, his voice steady despite the impossible sights around them. All charges are synchronized and ready. Suddenly the Aegis shook as something massive struck its hull. Through the view screen they could see a void wraith the size of a small moon approaching, its tentacles of living darkness reaching toward their ship. Evasive maneuvers, Lee Sujin ordered, but Navigator Ju-young shook her head. No good, Captain. The dimensional currents are too strong. We're locked on course. The massive wraith's tentacle wrapped around the Aegis, and for a moment the crew felt their very existence beginning to unravel. The ship's reality anchor generators screamed in protest as they fought to keep the vessel from being consumed. Hull breach on Deck 7, Haeanwoo reported.
Ow!
the creatures trying to phase through our dimensional shielding. 20 seconds to detonation, Minho called out, sweat beading on his forehead. The charges are stable, but if that thing gets through our shields, Li Sujin made a decision that would echo through galactic history. She opened fleet-wide communications, her voice carrying to every ship in the massive battle. All stations, this is Captain Li Sujin of the Earth vessel Aegis. We are about to complete our mission. Remember us not for how we died, but for why we lived. Lived for Earth, for humanity, for the dreams of a better tomorrow. Lived for the galaxy that finally learned to listen. Her voice carried across the void to Admiral Kong on the Dimensional Fury. To the surviving alien commanders who had once mocked human warnings, to every being fighting desperately for their survival. 10 seconds to detonation, Minho announced. It's been an honor serving with you all. The honor was mine, Li Sujin replied, her hand hovering over the final activation switch. For everyone we couldn't save, and everyone we still can. The quantum resonance charges detonated in a cascade of brilliant light that could be seen across multiple dimensions. The explosion tore through the fabric of space-time itself, causing the Nexus Rift to collapse in on itself like a massive black hole in reverse. The dimensional barrier between realities snapped back into place with a sound that was felt rather than heard, sealing the breach forever. The Aegis and her crew of 47 were vaporized instantly, their atoms scattered across 17 different dimensions, but their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Cut off from their home dimension, the remaining Void Wraiths found themselves trapped in normal space-time, where conventional weapons could finally destroy them. 6 months later, the rebuilt Galactic Council Chamber was a very different place. Gone were the floating platforms and displays of alien superiority. Instead, simple chairs arranged in a circle emphasized equality among species. At the center of the chamber stood a memorial wall bearing the names of 43 billion beings lost in the crisis. Admiral Kong Duhan, now wearing the uniform of Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense, stood before the assembled representatives. His weathered face showed the strain of rebuilding a shattered galaxy, but his eyes held determination. The Void Wraith crisis taught us that the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than we ever imagined, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. But it also taught us that sometimes the species others consider primitive, or paranoid, are the ones who see threats others miss. Ambassador Park Ji-woo, now Director of Dimensional Security, stepped forward carrying a datapad. Today we established the Early Warning Protocol. Any species that detects potential threats will be heard, investigated, and taken seriously. Never again will pride and arrogance cost us what we cannot afford to lose. Alien delegates, humbled by their losses and grateful for their survival, voted unanimously to approve the new protocols. The Drakmori Keth, Syntoids, and dozens of other species that had once considered themselves superior to humanity now looked to human leadership for protection against the unknown. As the session ended and delegates filed out, Admiral Kong remained behind, looking up at the memorial wall where Captain Li Sujin's name blazed in letters of pure gold. We kept our promise, Sujin, he whispered. They're listening now. The galaxy learned that sometimes the smallest voice carries the most important message. The memorial wall also bore a simple inscription that had become the motto of the new Galactic Defense Force. For those who prepare for the impossible becomes survivable. Humanity had gone from being the galaxy's youngest and most dismissed species to its guardians and protectors. They had proven that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their courage, but their willingness to prepare for nightmares that others refused to believe could exist, in a universe filled with wonders and terrors. The paranoid don't just survive, they save everyone else. The end.